Welcome back, Richard. It's good to see you this morning.
Good to see you. Yep.
Today we're going to talk. We're going to expand some conversations that we had recently. Last week we did a podcast talking about internet addiction, or the effects that the internet and devices have on our brains, and that it's not just bad for teenagers. It's bad for it can lead to changes for everyone. And then just this past Sunday, we talked about our just last recent podcast. We talked about your piqued interest in the demise of the cell phone that wasn't really what you thought it was going to be. I'm still sorry to hear that for you.
I was really optimistic. I thought, oh, the cell phone is dying. You know, when Apple first developed the cell phone, everybody predicted it was going to be the end of the company because they thought it was going to be most people predicted that the cell phone, the iPhone, was going to be a monumental failure.
Yeah.
Okay. I did. And I was hoping that maybe we were going to see the demise of the cell phone, but lo and behold, not only are we not going to see the demise of the cell phone, we're going to see the proliferation of other devices based on AI. So I was very disappointed.
Yeah.
So we want to continue this conversation because this reader asked a very good question. Is this use, devices or media, internets, is it just harmful for teenagers? And the short answer is no. It's probably harmful for most of us.
Right.
Because we overuse it or misuse it or abuse it. And that seems to be the recurring theme here. So we have two articles today, and the first one is one that we posted last week.
Right.
It was written by an observant Jew. Now, the reason that the observant part is important is because an observant Jew is very serious about their Sabbath, what they call Shabbat. It's from the first stars that come out on Friday night to the first stars that come out on Saturday night. So it's Friday night to Saturday, 24-hour period, where you do no work, you only are with family, you're in prayer, you're thinking about the previous week that you just had and the week that's coming up. And it's really a time to be very observant. And so for this observant Jew, he would put his phone, he would turn it off and put it in a drawer, and it would stay there during this 24-hour period. Because he knows that, he said, I'll want to look at the weather, I'll check the weather, and when I look up, 40 minutes have gone by because I've been doing all these other things. And
Right.
People stay in bed and they stay on their phones. They call it bed rotting. Is that a term that you've heard that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay. People do bed rotting. They lie in bed. Some people call that self-care. I'm just going to stay in bed and veg and stay on my phone. He calls it bed rotting. None of this stuff is good for you. And he said he doesn't do any of that because on Shabbat, this 24-hour period, he reconnects with himself and family and people. Okay.
Yeah.
So he said the problem is we're using it. The problem is not that we don't use this. He said it's easy not to use it. I turn it off and put it in a drawer. The problem is when I use it, I don't use it in moderation. And,
Right.
and that he says that same thing in this article. He said, and he said, so people are talking about, well, let's limit my access to apps, or we have self-help people who give all kinds of advice about how to use your phone less and all that stuff. And he said that misses the whole point. He said all these little tricks, putting warning labels on phones, that was in the news a couple of weeks ago. He said the point is that it's entirely possible to waste your entire life scrolling and being on the internet. And this was the first time that I had seen the 8-8-8 idea. Okay,
Right.
that you sleep for 8 hours, you work for 8 hours, or you're in school for 8 hours, and then you have another 8 hours. Well, if you're spending 7 to 9 hours on digital devices, he considers that a possible problem.
Right. And that makes sense. And this is, I think, the crux of what you and I talk about all the time, that it's not just that it's devices. The problem is that you have those other 8 hours, and if you spend those other 8 hours focused and enthralled on just one thing,
Mhm.
that's going to be a problem. We heard from another listener, who wrote in on our YouTube channel that, in response to our last podcast about, spending too much time online, and he referred, I think it was a gentleman, but I'll change my pronoun. Sorry. They talked about um, how being on the internet has improved their life. That they, that's where
Mhm.
they met their spouse. That's where they found a career. That's where they learned all this stuff, and so they focus on all these positives that have come out of the fact that they spend a good portion of their life on the internet. And some people can say that. I don't know that that's necessarily the case for most people. I think
Mhm.
most people spend their time online, mindlessly scrolling, as the writer said. You go in to check the weather, and all of a sudden 45 minutes have passed, and who knows what you've looked at. And for some
Right.
reason, now you know what the weather is like on the other side of the world. And it's like, why do I know that? Why was I even looking at that? There was something that popped up on the screen and it made me click on it. So we spend so much of our time mindlessly active in these activities that don't really do anything for us.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so that third 8 hour block of the day is really
Right.
precious and important, and we're not really using it very well.
Yeah, what are we doing with those 8 hours? What have you accomplished in those 8 hours? So he says, like Shabbat, it's 24 hours to remember, to reflect, to
Mhm.
reconnect with people. And so it gives him that. And it was in that time where he realized that, wow, I'm really spending a lot of my time doing something that's not getting me very much. And it's a nice little article, and we would recommend it.
Yeah.
The second article is it's a very good read if you have time. It's a little longer. It was written by Tara Isabella Burton. She earned her doctorate in theology from Trinity College in Oxford. So she gives advice, but it's not like she's one of these online gurus who gives you all these cute little things, strategies you can use. Hers is much more thoughtful. It's much more, it's much more practical, and it's much more, I don't know, there's something much more genuine about the way she approaches this. And the title of the article is Simple Steps to Combat Smartphone Addiction. And she begins the article by acknowledging that she is addicted to her phone. She lives in New York City, and she writes comically about impulse buying from eBay and unnecessary uh, lifts and car rides. And she said, and I Amazon myself things. And that struck me. Amazon now is a verb.
Yeah.
I'm going to Amazon it. And so we've turned this company name into a verb. So she said, and I Amazon myself things. And we all do that. She begins by saying, she thought about it. She said, I spend 6 to 7 hours of screen time a day. That's that 8 hours that we talked about earlier. She said, at the same time, I'm low on money. My money's going somewhere. I
Mhm.
don't have a good attention span. I'm very fidgety. I wonder if I have ADHD. And she said, every year I say, this is going to be the year that I manage my cell phone better. She makes this New Year's resolution. Every year she stops. Okay.
Yeah.
Then she realized that she's written two novels, and during those two novel writing periods, she uses only a flip phone. So she goes without the internet, and just for the month that she was writing these books. And she suddenly realized that these were the happiest and most fulfilling time of her life was without this smartphone.
And I think that that's a really, it's such an important thing to highlight, but also, like, I wonder how in the world she thought, you know what, when I'm working on this, I need to switch to a flip phone instead of using my
Right.
smartphone. Like,
Mhm.
it's ingenious, and it's I'm sure a very wise thing. And based upon what she's writing, it sounds like it was very beneficial to her. I don't know that
Mhm.
I would have thought to, you know, sort of step back from the types of devices that I'm using. I feel like my rationale would be, I need to maintain, keep as much access to information as I can. So I'm going to keep my smartphone so I can look up things and search for things. Um,
Right.
and she didn't. She switched to the flip phone during those times when she was writing, and it as you said, she said that it was the an incredible time of her life, despite the fact that she lives in New York, where smartphones are really important, and you feel
Right.
as though you
Mhm.
can't live without it. She did this switch during the time when she was writing, and some of the things that she discovered and sort of noted about that time is really, really interesting.
Right. What I like about her is rather than talking about, well, you can do these 5 or 6 things to reduce your cell phone use, what she did is went to the next step, which is to develop new interests or different interests that used her time differently.
Well,
You know,
I think in the way that I saw it, and it's interesting to hear you say it that way, because the way that I saw it was not necessarily that she found those things, but that she had the time to discover some of these things, and she just kind of, you find that, you know, oh, I have time to volunteer now. I have
yeah.
time to cook now. Whereas maybe before, because, you know, I think that we don't really we're not really aware of the amount of time that we spend on our phones or connected and plugged in. And we think, oh, I don't have time to do that. But the reason that we don't have time to do that is because we're wasting time doing these other things. And the impression that I got from her is that she discovered these other things because now all of a sudden she has 6 or 7 hours more time every day. And so now I can now look at these new things I found, like an air fryer and
Right. That's
and walking and things like that.
Yeah, that was the funny part about this. It all began with an air fryer, and I thought, what does an air fryer have to do with it? Well, the air fryer was she began to cook at home because the air fryer cooks so much faster. And so she began making more meals at home, and that was a good thing. And so she started to enjoy that, and she realized that she likes her own cooking more than restaurant cooking. So she goes to restaurants less often. She volunteers more. She cooks at least 2 meals at home. She walks. She started walking everywhere. Before, she said she would jump into an Uber or a Lyft because she could text or be on her phone during the car ride.
Yeah.
So she started walking everywhere. Um, she's spending less money. She's
Yeah.
not Amazoning as much as she used to. She also carries a book everywhere she goes. That was advice that readers and writers gave years ago. They said, just always carry a book with you and you'll find out that you read more. She also does much of her work in a library where you're not allowed to have a cell phone. You
Right.
can't bring your cell phone into the library. And so she does her work there. She's automatically without it.
Well, and interestingly, she notes that this library that she works at often is a half-hour walk from her apartment. So it's not even like it's just around the corner, so she's getting exercise to go to the library where she works, and the library doesn't even allow cell phones in there anyways. And so
Right.
so there's not other distractions of other people on their devices either. So yeah, this really interesting experience that she had, and it sounds like as she wrote, it really changed her life. It took her into unexpected directions.
Yeah. And one of those was what she talks about, she refers to as her relationship with her world
Yeah.
changed and relationship with screens changed. Walking gave her time to get to know people in her neighborhood better.
Yeah.
In New York, it's a little crowded, but you can get to know people because people are out there milling about. But walking gave her a chance to meet some of these people and get to know them. She began eating fewer restaurant meals, better for her health, and she's found herself spending more times in places like museums and galleries rather than bars and restaurants, where you tend to use your devices. We use them less in places like museums and galleries. So go places where you don't use your phone as much. But it
Yeah.
also changed the relationship with screens.
Mhm.
And one of the things that she did, she used social media blockers, and that's way beyond anything I know about.
Yeah.
What did she do? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what those are. I mean, it's interesting. It would seem to me that if you don't want social media, you just don't put those apps on your phone. But so I don't know if there's special. I haven't researched that to know if there's special things to block
Mhm.
social media. But what I thought was interesting is that she, instead of having a smartphone, she uses like a smart watch or a wearable device like an Apple Watch or
Mhm.
something like that, because it monitors your health, and it can monitor, help you with some of those goals and things like that. But it's not like you are scrolling the internet or you're browsing through like social media and things like that. You can't do those kinds of things on your Apple Watch. So, while you can have that wearable technology and get that information and sort of to monitor some things that you want to monitor health wise, it doesn't give you that same access to the internet and all the other things that she was trying to avoid.
Now, I'm one of those odd birds. I don't have an Apple Watch. I have bought Apple Watches for others, but you have an Apple Watch.
Mhm.
So this is true that if you just have an Apple Watch, that you don't browse or scroll as much,
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're avoiding the temptation. You can stay connected to everybody. I can reach you anytime I want
Yeah.
because you get notifications,
Yeah.
but you're not scrolling and shopping and Amazoning and doing all the other things.
Right. So you can keep track of things like if you have it connected to your smartphone, you will get updates from social media and things like that on it. But if you don't have the smartphone and you don't have those apps, then it doesn't give you any of those things. There are um there are versions of smart wearable devices like smartphone watches where you can get phone calls on it and you can get text messages on it and things like that. So you can stay connected to people, um, sort of in the traditional way of staying connected with people, not through social media. But yeah, you don't have the same kind of access to everything else that you do on your phones or devices.
Right. Now, one of the things about this woman is that this was a very thoughtful process for her. That this wasn't, I'm going to do these 10 tricks and I'll use my cell phone less. She wanted to use her cell phone less. She acknowledged that she was truly overusing it. Again, that idea that, like the other writer said that he said it's not. He said I can put it in a drawer, not use it. He said abstinence isn't hard to do. What's hard is moderation.
Right.
Not being drawn into this thing and burning up hundreds of hours that you don't realize you're losing. She said the same thing. So this is something she really wanted to do. And hers was a gradual movement toward other activities that she knew were more rewarding for her.
Right.
Right. And
Well,
I think
it's
that's
I think one of the things she said is so important because we think, and we did a podcast a number of months ago on, that social media isn't really social, that that many times people who use social media the most also report feeling the loneliest.
Mhm, mhm,
And so, not surprisingly, one of the things she found was that when she stopped using her device in that way, and went to the flip phone, she was spending not just more time at her home and in galleries and libraries, as you said a minute ago, but she's also spending more time with friends. So
right.
if she wants to interact with them, yes, you can talk on the phone and text and stuff like that. But if she really wants to engage with them, she has to see them. So she's
Right.
going to their homes more often and she's interacting with them more that way. And whether her friends are using their devices or not, if she's not using them, they can't stay connected other than sort of more directly. And so I
Right.
thought that was a really interesting phenomenon for her because we sort of theorized that would happen, but
Mm,
here's a direct example.
right. And so the changes that she talks about and these are life changes. In other words, it's not just little tricks, strategies. These are important life changes that she wanted to make. As you said, she's spending more time at home, making her own meals, more time in the homes of her friends, more times in libraries and museums. She's spending more time in the gym. She's spending her time, and this is the important in this article, is time. She's spending her time doing the things that she really finds valuable. The other thing is she's doing less buying. She has more money
Right.
because when you're on your phone, there's these things. I mean, these are commercial devices, and you're constantly tempted. And she talks about her interior life, and I think she means her real life, the person that she is. She said that remains my own, and I think, she said, I have time to think and read and write, and sometimes just watch the world. And the other thing she says is, she said, I can't think of a time in my life when so few companies have made money off me. And that's something I want to tell my children, is that be careful with these devices, because as important as they are to you, they are commercial devices, and there's somebody constantly selling you something. So be very careful about how you use them.
Absolutely. And I think one of the last benefits that she found, and Richard, hold on, because I'm gonna say something very positive about your technology use. So be ready. One of the things she said was that her problem was not with technology. Her problem was with the misuse of technology, and that
Right.
she would get too into it, too engaged in it, and would be difficult to separate. And you have often referred to yourself as a technophobe or a Luddite, and
Right.
I think that is sort of what she is emulating here. What she's saying is that maybe we do need to use these things less. Sort of take a page from your book of, yes, it's very beneficial. It keeps me in contact with people. I can call people. People can reach me if needed. But you're also not using it in the same way that other people are using it, and so you do still stay connected with other people much more. You spend more time spending time sitting across the table or in the same room with friends and things like that than I do, because you don't use your phone or your devices in the same way that I do, in the same way that many other people do. And so you come into the office many times and you're talking about how you spent the evening talking with some friends at some location here in town at a restaurant or something, talking and just conversing about the world and what's happening in the world. And many of us don't do that because we're on our devices. So there's a
And
positive thing for you there, Luddite.
thank you. Yeah, you have to look up Luddites. Two other things here. This idea of misuse, using it in moderation, okay? She refers to this as that we want to live in a frictionless world. And by frictionless, she means I don't have to be in communication with other people. I don't have to deal with other people. And it struck me that you can now go to the grocery store and do your shopping, do self-checkout, and never communicate with another person. That going to a store used to be a place where you talked to other people, where you interacted with other people. You don't have to do that today.
Right. And we wonder why anxiety is higher than ever. Well,
Mhm.
the way that you deal with anxiety is to put yourselves in situations where you have to overcome that anxiety. And so if you
Right.
have a little bit of anxiety with interacting with other people, man, smartphones is the best way to live your life, because you never have to interact with anyone, because you can order everything delivered, or you can order everything where you just pop the trunk and they put the stuff in the back of the trunk, and then you go home and you never have to say a word to anyone. Um,
Right.
you know, but that's just going to exacerbate your anxiety. And so,
Right.
so yeah, our goal is this, for whatever reason, is this frictionless world. But you know what? The world is full of friction. and we have to learn how to deal with it.
Right. But today you don't have to. I mean, today you can live a hermetic existence and never leave your house or your apartment. Just go to the front door and pick up the package.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I'm going to give my children from this podcast is the next line that this is hers. She said she was paring, like a paring knife, paring to smallness rather than purchasing to bigness. Rather than buying more, she said, let's pare down to small. Let's live a simpler existence. And I think that's what she accomplishes. That's what she has accomplished in her personal life. And the message that she gives in this article is we have to pare down our lives, make them a little simpler, rather than purchase to more and more and more and more. Okay. So she acknowledges that it's almost an impossible goal
Right.
to really pare down. She said it's not just that the cell phone is addictive, but you're actually combating the entire culture of the world that my children live in. They're adults, but they're young adults. The world they live in is here's everything, and you can just keep buying it and buying it and buying it and buying it. And so there's a whole culture of social media and vacations and take pictures and all that stuff that you're also combating that whole world. So it's not just the device, it's the entire world that the device has created.
Right. So it requires an entire change of your life
Mhm.
because, what these devices do call for is, they lure you into participating in this life, this world of, this is how you stay connected to your friends. This is what you do. This is what everybody's on. This is where everybody's
Mhm.
connected. This is what everybody's doing. And so it creates this lure and this attraction to it that makes us want to plug in and become engaged with it. And, you know, that is in many ways, in some ways it's true. And some of that is age dependent. She has I don't know that the article gave her age. I don't remember that, but you know, it's very different to do that at one stage of life than it is to do, say, as a teenager or
Right.
as a young
Mhm.
college student and all, because life is very different at those stages than it is once you're done with grad school. And she's finished grad school and everything already, so presumably she's working and she has her professional life going.
Mhm.
It's different to do it when you're much more settled than when you're still building much of your life. And so just recognizing that it's going to be different at different developmental stages. But the way the picture that she paints is kind of attractive.
It really is. It's part of that. Let's simplify it. Let's become more thoughtful. I
Mm.
think that's the message here is that what kind of a life do you want to live? Because what the culture does, what the cell phone culture does, and I think she's right about this. She said it perverts our desire for friendship, for community, for fulfillment, and it perverts those into a desire for stuff and for looking good in social media photos. And
Mhm.
that's where the culture's dragging us. And I think she's right about that. And we have to be mindful and say, no, that's not the life I want. I want to have this life. And
Yeah.
so it is a life change. It's not just using your cell phone fewer hours a day.
Yeah.
It's going to take a life change. And what is the life that you want to live? What
Mhm.
do you really want to do? And not be dragged into this culture of buying more stuff and looking good in your photos.
Absolutely. So, as you said, the link to the article is in the show notes. It's a lengthy, a little bit longer of an article, but it's a
Yeah.
very, very good read, and I think you guys will enjoy it. So, that is
Right.
it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.